Hi everyone. The origin of Augmented 6th chords is unclear, with some people claiming they originated from chromatic voice leading between first inversion and root position chords whose root notes are a tone apart, while others believe they arose as alterations of diatonic chord degrees. It is these varying theories which have led some to question whether Augmented 6th chords have root notes or are simply vertical interactions of linear motion. As we'll see, depending on their context, often augmented sixth sonorities may be heard more as a result of linear chromaticism, while in other instances they may be heard as vertical entities. Regardless whether heard as linear constructs or chords in their own right, these vertical chromatic note combinations have three common versions and several less known types. The key element connecting all of these chords is the presence of an augmented sixth interval, or its inversion, the diminished third. The resolution of these characteristic intervals is typically by contrary motion to a doubled note. The augmented sixth interval resolves outwards to an octave, and the diminished third inwards either to a unison or octave depending on the chord spacing. The other element connecting the three common augmented sixth chords and some of the other types is the presence of a major third interval above the lowest note of the augmented sixth interval. If only the major third and augmented sixth intervals are present, it forms a so-called Italian augmented sixth chord. If an augmented fourth interval is also included, a so-called French augmented sixth chord is formed. And if a perfect fifth interval is used instead of the augmented fourth, it forms a so-called German augmented sixth chord. German augmented sixth chords sound identical and are enharmonically equivalent with dominant seventh chords. It is only their location and the behaviour of their respective notes which suggest which chord is in use. The geographical labels of the common augmented sixth chords are meaningless and were apparently conceived in the 19th century using racial stereotypes. The music of France, Italy and Germany cannot be illustrated in a smaller compass than by the use of these three chords. The feebleness of the French sixth compared with the elegance of the Italian and the strength of the German leaves no doubt of their superior excellence. Because these labels are now widespread, in this video I will continue to use them. However, I will also include figured bass numerals. In this way, a clearer connection between the three common augmented sixth chord types and the other types which lack established labels can be made. Other possible augmented sixth chords include this type, which contains above the augmented sixth interval's lowest note a major third and an augmented fifth interval, and this type which lacks a major third but instead includes an augmented fourth and second. Many theorists now consider as potential augmented sixth chords any chord which contains an augmented sixth interval and whose degrees resolve as a typical augmented sixth chord. The resolution of augmented sixth chords, or more specifically the resolution of the augmented sixth interval, often moves by contrary motion to the doubled root note of the subsequent chord, with the remaining notes typically moving by step. To avoid potential consecutive fifths in the resolution of the German augmented sixth chord to a root position chord either requires the German sixth be changed into one of the other augmented sixth chord types, or if appropriate, that a cadential 6/4 progression is inserted between the German sixth and subsequent chord. Although resolution of the augmented sixth interval to the subsequent chord's root note is very common, resolutions may also occur to its third or fifth degrees. An example of the resolution to a chord's third occurs here, where this German augmented sixth chord, written here as its enharmonic equivalent dominant seventh, resolves to root position E minor harmony. Here the augmented sixth chord is inverted with its fifth degree in the bass resolving to E minor's root note. A common resolution of the augmented sixth interval to the subsequent chord's fifth degree occurs with use of the so-called common note augmented sixth chord. Here, for example, a common B note in the bass links an inverted supertonic half diminished seventh chord, a French augmented sixth chord, and B minor harmony. Here again, the augmented sixth chord is inverted here with its third degree in the bass. In this excerpt, an argument could be made that the augmented sixth chord is simply a vertical interaction of the E sharp with the other notes already sounding from supertonic harmony. Here, however, a move from supertonic to tonic harmony through a dominant functioning augmented sixth chord, here effectively behaving as a tritone substitution, makes more sense in terms of probable harmonic progression. Of the other two augmented sixth chords mentioned earlier, this version doesn't appear to have been used frequently, although Prout claims this as an example. Once again, this could simply be heard as the result of passing motion here between tonic and dominant harmony, or as a predominant functioning augmented sixth chord. This augmented sixth chord version some claim to occur here, while others hear the same note combination as a half diminished seventh chord, often termed the Tritone chord. Heard as an augmented sixth chord, here it has a predominant function as its top note moves down by a semitone to the seventh of the subsequent E dominant seventh harmony. Theoretically, a root position augmented sixth chord may be used anywhere a semitone descends. Accepted harmonic and voice leading rules, however, preclude certain resolutions, such as to the leading note diminished chord in a major or minor key. Given these limiting factors, several common locations of augmented sixth chords have arisen, with probably the most common being on the submediant degree of a minor key or the flattened submediant in major. Here, the augmented sixth chord typically resolves to dominant harmony or to a cadential 6/4 progression. Another relatively common location of augmented sixth chords is on the flattened supertonic of both major and minor keys. It is this location which has drawn parallels between the augmented sixth chord and tritone substitutions. For example, a dominant 7th flat 5 tritone substitution and the French augmented sixth chord located on a scale's flattened supertonic are identical, with the augmented sixth root note sounding as the dominant's flattened fifth degree. In other words, because the French augmented sixth chord transposes onto itself at the interval of a tritone, the same chord may be interpreted either as the dominant 7th flat 5 chord, the dominant's tritone substitution with flattened fifth degree located on the key's flattened supertonic, or as the French augmented sixth chord on the flattened supertonic. A French augmented sixth chord on the flattened submediant can also be heard as the tritone substitution of secondary dominant 7th flat 5 supertonic harmony, as seen in this common substituted 2/5 progression. In jazz, because of the preponderance of seventh chords, the typical resolution of augmented sixth intervals is not necessarily by contrary motion, but often includes the interval's upper note being held or resounded as the seventh degree of the following chord. I hope you found this useful. Thanks for watching. See you next time.